My name is Dr. Amanda Foster, and I am a neurologist at Boston General Hospital. I specialize in cases involving traumatic brain injuries, stroke recovery, and rare neurological conditions. In 15 years of practice, I have encountered patients who have lost their ability to speak, patients who speak in fragments, and patients who develop entirely new speech patterns after brain trauma. But I had never met anyone like Elena Vasquez. Elena was admitted to our hospital on a Thursday morning in March, brought in by her landlord who had found her unconscious in her apartment. She was a woman in her early 30s with no identification and no emergency contacts. According to the landlord, she was a quiet tenant who paid her rent on time and kept to herself. He only discovered her because he had come to fix a leaky faucet and found her collapsed on her kitchen floor. The initial examination revealed signs of a severe seizure, but her brain scans showed something unusual. Areas of hyperactivity in regions associated with language processing, memory storage, and something called the Broca's area, which controls speech production. It was as if her brain was working overtime in all the areas related to communication. When Elena finally regained consciousness that evening, the first thing she did was speak. But what made it remarkable was not just that she was coherent after such a severe neurological episode. It was the way she spoke. "Doctor," she said in perfect, unaccented English, "I am experiencing some discomfort in my temporal region." I was impressed by her articulate description of her symptoms, especially considering she had just awakened from a seizure-induced coma. "That is completely normal after what you have been through. Can you tell me your full name?" "Elena Maria Vasquez," she replied. Then, without any prompting, she repeated it in what sounded like Spanish, "Elena Maria Vasquez." Then again in what I recognized as French, "Elena Marie Vasquez." Then in German, Italian, and several other languages I could not immediately identify. I looked at my colleague, Dr. James Park, who had been monitoring Elena's vitals. "Elena, how many languages do you speak?" She paused as if counting in her head. 12 languages fluently, Dr. Foster. English, Spanish, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, Mandarin Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, Hebrew, and Dutch. Dr. Park and I exchanged glances. It was not unheard of for people to be multilingual, especially those who worked in international business or academia, but 12 languages was extraordinary. "What is your profession, Elena?" I asked. I was... She paused, looking confused for the first time since waking up. "I believe I was a translator, but something feels different about my memories, like they are not quite complete." This was concerning. Memory issues were common after seizures, but Elena seemed to have perfect recall of multiple languages while struggling to remember basic facts about her life. "Elena, I am going to ask you to count to 10 in different languages, just to assess your cognitive function," I said. What happened next was remarkable. Elena counted to 10 in English, then Spanish, then French, and continued through all 12 languages she had mentioned. Her pronunciation was flawless in each language, with no hesitation or confusion between them. But then something strange happened. As she finished counting in Dutch, she continued counting, but in a language I had never heard before. The sounds were unlike anything in my experience, complex, musical, with tonal qualities that seemed almost otherworldly. "Elena," I interrupted gently, "what language were you just speaking?" She looked at me with an expression of surprise, as if she had not realized she was still speaking. I do not know. That is strange. I have never heard that language before, but somehow I knew exactly what I was saying." Dr. Park leaned forward. "What were you saying in that language?" Elena concentrated, as if trying to translate something complex. "I was counting, but the numbers, they were not just numbers. Each one had additional meaning. Like the number 3 also meant connection between past and future, and the number 7 meant the point where understanding begins." I had been a neurologist for 15 years, and I had never encountered anything like this. Patients sometimes developed new speech patterns after brain trauma, but they did not spontaneously acquire entirely new languages with complex philosophical meanings. Elena, have you ever studied linguistics or ancient languages? I asked. Not that I remember, she replied. But, doctor, there is something else. When I speak this 13th language, I understand things that I did not understand before. What kind of things? Elena looked directly at me, and for a moment her eyes seemed to hold knowledge far beyond her years. I understand why I am here, Dr. Foster, and I understand what is happening to others like me. Others like you? People who have been awakened, Elena said, though she seemed surprised by her own word choice. People whose brains have been activated to access knowledge that was always there but hidden. Dr. Park and I looked at each other again. This was beginning to sound like more than just a post-seizure confusion. Elena was speaking coherently, but the content of what she was saying suggested either a complex delusion or something far stranger. Elena, when you say awakened, what do you mean exactly? I asked carefully. She closed her eyes and spoke several sentences in that mysterious 13th language. When she opened her eyes, she looked troubled. Dr. Foster, what I just said, it translates roughly to the barriers between stored knowledge and accessible knowledge are dissolving. What was separated is becoming whole. But I have no idea how I know this language or why I understand these concepts. Over the next 2 days, Elena's condition became increasingly fascinating and concerning. Her brain scans continued to show hyperactivity in language centers, but now we were also seeing unusual patterns in areas associated with memory consolidation and something called the default mode network, the brain regions that are active when we are at rest. Dr. Park had consulted with linguists from Harvard University, and none of them could identify the 13th language Elena was speaking. The phonetic patterns were unlike any known language family, and the grammatical structure seemed impossibly complex. Dr. Foster, Elena said during one of our sessions, I have been thinking about my condition, and I believe I know what happened to me. Please, tell me your thoughts. Elena sat up in her hospital bed and spoke a short phrase in the mysterious language. That translates to something like, artificial barriers removed, natural connections restored. I think my brain has been changed somehow, and now I can access information that was always there but blocked. Blocked by what? I am not sure, Elena admitted. But I keep having memories, or maybe they are not memories, of being in a place with others like me. We were being taught, or maybe trained, to use abilities that most humans cannot access. This was concerning. Elena was describing what sounded like false memories or possibly the beginning of a psychotic episode. But her cognitive function remained perfect, and her personality was completely stable. Elena, can you describe this place you remember? She closed her eyes and spoke several sentences in the 13th language, then translated. It was underground, but it felt vast. There were people there from all over the world, all of us learning to access what they called the inherited knowledge. They told us that human brains contain genetic memories from our entire evolutionary history, but most people can never access them. I was taking detailed notes, trying to determine if this was a medical phenomenon or a psychiatric one. Who were they in this memory? Scientists, I think, but not like any scientists I have ever seen. They seem to know things about the human brain that are not in any textbook. Dr. Park entered the room with a concerned expression. Dr. Foster, I need to speak with you privately. We stepped into the hallway and Dr. Park showed me a tablet with news articles pulled up. I have been doing some research on unusual neurological cases, and I found something disturbing, he said. Over the past 6 months, there have been at least 12 cases worldwide of people developing sudden linguistic abilities after seizures or unexplained comas. I scrolled through the articles. A businessman in Tokyo who began speaking ancient Sumerian. A teacher in London who started communicating in a language that linguists could not classify. a farmer in rural Brazil who suddenly became fluent in what experts described as a previously unknown but highly sophisticated language. This cannot be a coincidence, I said. It gets stranger, Dr. Park continued. I contacted some of the doctors who treated these patients. In every case, the patients described memories of being in some kind of underground facility where they were trained to access inherited knowledge. I felt a chill run down my spine. Are you suggesting that Elena and these other patients were actually taken somewhere and experimented on? I do not know what I am suggesting, Dr. Park admitted, but I think we need to take Elena's memories more seriously. We returned to Elena's room, where we found her writing in a notebook using symbols that looked like no alphabet I had ever seen. Elena, what are you writing? I asked. She looked up, seeming surprised to see the symbols on the page. I was trying to write down my thoughts about my condition, but these symbols just came naturally. I understand them perfectly, but I have never seen them before. I examined the symbols. They were complex, geometric, and seemed to follow consistent patterns that suggested a true writing system. Can you read this back to us? Dr. Park asked. Elena studied the page and began to read in the 13th language, then translated. The awakening process is irreversible. Once the barriers are removed, the inherited knowledge becomes part of conscious awareness. We are becoming what humanity was meant to be before the limitations were imposed. What limitations? I asked. Elena looked troubled. Dr. Foster, I think someone or something has been limiting human potential for a very long time. And now, for some reason, those limitations are being removed from certain individuals. She wrote another line of symbols and translated, "The question is not how we gain these abilities. The question is why they were taken away in the first place." Dr. Park and I looked at each other. Elena was either experiencing an elaborate delusion, or she was uncovering something that challenged everything we understood about human consciousness and potential. Elena, I said carefully, do you remember anything about how you came to be in that underground facility? She closed her eyes and concentrated. When she opened them, her expression was frightened. Dr. Foster, I do not think I was taken there. I think I volunteered. Elena's revelation that she might have volunteered for whatever happened to her opened up entirely new questions about her condition. If she was not a victim of some kind of medical experimentation, then what exactly had she agreed to participate in? Elena, try to remember more about volunteering for this program, I encouraged. What convinced you to participate? She spoke a long passage in the 13th language, pausing occasionally as if searching for the right translation. They approached me because of my language abilities. Even before this, I was naturally gifted with languages. They said I was one of a small percentage of humans who had a genetic predisposition for accessing inherited knowledge. Who approached you? Dr. Park asked. A woman named Dr. Sarah Chen. She was a neurogeneticist who had discovered something she called linguistic DNA, genetic information that contained the accumulated knowledge of human civilization, encoded in our neural pathways, but normally inaccessible. I was taking notes frantically. This was either the most elaborate delusion I had ever encountered, or Elena was describing a breakthrough in neuroscience that was decades ahead of current understanding. What did Dr. Chen tell you about this inherited knowledge? I asked. Elena wrote something in her symbol language and translated. She said that every human brain contains genetic memories from our entire evolutionary history. Not just biological memories, but cultural ones, languages that were spoken by our ancestors, knowledge that was lost to history, wisdom that was accumulated over thousands of years. And you agreed to let them unlock this information? Dr. Park asked. Not just unlock it, Elena clarified. According to Dr. Chen, accessing inherited knowledge changes the brain permanently. Once the barriers are removed, there is no going back. You become something more than human, but also something different from what you were before. She paused and spoke another phrase in the mysterious language. That translates to evolution by choice rather than by chance. Dr. Chen believed that human development had been artificially limited, and she had found a way to remove those limitations. This was becoming increasingly concerning. If Elena was telling the truth, then she had undergone some kind of experimental procedure that fundamentally altered her brain function. Elena, do you remember the actual procedure? I asked. She concentrated, and her expression became troubled. It was not surgical. They used some kind of electromagnetic stimulation combined with specific chemical compounds. The process took several hours, and during that time, I experienced visions. What kind of visions? I saw the history of human language development, but not as we understand it in textbooks. I saw how certain knowledge was deliberately hidden or forgotten. I saw civilizations that possessed understanding far beyond what we have today. Elena wrote a complex series of symbols and translated. The most shocking vision was seeing how this knowledge was systematically suppressed, not by natural forgetting, but by deliberate action. Someone or something wanted human potential to remain limited. Dr. Park leaned forward. Elena, in these visions, did you see who was responsible for suppressing this knowledge? Elena's expression grew fearful. That is where my memories become unclear, but I have the impression that it was not entirely human. Before I could ask her to elaborate, Elena suddenly began speaking rapidly in the 13th language. Her voice took on an urgent, almost panicked tone. Elena, what are you saying? I asked. She stopped abruptly and looked at us with wide eyes. I was saying, they know we are awakening. They are coming to stop the process. But Dr. Foster, I do not know why I said that or who they are. At that moment, the lights in Elena's room flickered, and we heard what sounded like electronic interference from the monitoring equipment. Dr. Park checked the machines, but they appeared to be functioning normally. That is strange, he muttered. Elena wrote something quickly in her symbols and showed it to us. The translation was chilling. The Watchers are aware. Protection required immediately. Elena, who are the Watchers? I asked. Before she could answer, the hospital's intercom system crackled to life with an announcement. Dr. Foster, please report to the administrator's office immediately. Dr. Foster to administration. This was unusual. I was not scheduled for any administrative meetings, and the timing seemed too coincidental. Elena, I need to step out for a moment, I said. Dr. Park will stay with you. Elena grabbed my arm as I started to leave. Dr. Foster, please be careful. I have a feeling that your investigation into my condition has attracted attention from people who do not want this information to become public. As I walked toward the administrative offices, I could not shake the feeling that Elena was right to be concerned. The timing of the administrator's request, combined with the unusual electrical disturbances in Elena's room, suggested that someone might be monitoring our conversations. When I reached the administrator's office, I found two people waiting for me, our hospital administrator, Dr. Margaret Walsh, and a man in a dark suit who introduced himself as Agent Robert Morrison from the Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. Foster, Agent Morrison said, we need to discuss your patient Elena Vasquez. There are some national security implications to her condition that we need to address immediately. National security implications? How could a patient with unusual linguistic abilities possibly be a matter of national security? I am not sure I understand, I said carefully. Dr. Foster, Elena Vasquez is not who she appears to be, Agent Morrison replied. And her condition is far more dangerous than you realize. Agent Morrison gestured for me to sit down across from him and Dr. Walsh. The administrator looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with me as the agent opened a thick file folder. Dr. Foster, what I am about to tell you is classified information, Agent Morrison began. Elena Vasquez was part of an unauthorized genetic research program that was shut down 6 months ago by federal authorities. I felt my heart rate increase. What kind of research program? A private organization called the Prometheus Institute was conducting illegal experiments on human subjects, attempting to unlock what they called dormant genetic capabilities. Elena was one of approximately 50 subjects who underwent their procedures before we shut them down. Agent Morrison showed me photographs of what appeared to be an underground laboratory complex. The facility was hidden beneath a pharmaceutical company in Nevada. When we raided it, we found evidence of genetic manipulation, unauthorized drug testing, and psychological experimentation. What happened to the other subjects? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Most suffered severe neurological damage or death, Agent Morrison replied grimly. Elena and 11 others survived, but they developed abilities that pose potential security risks. Dr. Walsh finally spoke up. Amanda, I am sorry you were not informed of Elena's background earlier, but Agent Morrison felt it was safer for you to conduct your evaluation without preconceptions. Safer for whom? I asked, beginning to feel manipulated. Agent Morrison leaned forward. Dr. Foster, Elena's linguistic abilities are not just remarkable, they are potentially dangerous. The language she speaks that you cannot identify? It is not a natural human language. It appears to be some kind of artificial communication system that allows direct mind-to-mind contact with other subjects. This explained why Elena had been writing in unknown symbols and seemed to know things she should not know. Are you telling me that Elena can communicate telepathically with the other survivors? I asked. Not exactly telepathy, Agent Morrison clarified. More like a shared consciousness network. When one subject learns something or remembers something, all the others gain access to that information. The implications were staggering. If Elena and the other survivors were connected in some kind of neural network, then they essentially formed a collective intelligence with shared memories and knowledge. Where are the other survivors now? I asked. Agent Morrison's expression grew grim. That is the problem, Dr. Foster. 6 of them have disappeared from federal custody. We believe they are using their shared consciousness to coordinate escape plans and avoid recapture. And you think Elena is in contact with them? We know she is, Agent Morrison replied. Every time she speaks in that 13th language, she is not just translating concepts. She is communicating with the network. She has been sharing information about your hospital, your staff, and your investigation. I thought about the strange electrical disturbances in Elena's room and her warnings about watchers. If she was truly connected to other enhanced individuals, then our conversations had not been private at all. What do you want me to do? I asked. We need you to help us understand how their communication system works, Agent Morrison said. And we need you to help us locate the missing subjects before they do something that could compromise national security. What kind of threat do they pose? Dr. Walsh answered this time. Amanda, according to the research we recovered from the Prometheus Institute, these subjects do not just have enhanced linguistic abilities. They have access to genetic memories that contain advanced scientific knowledge, information about technologies that could be extremely dangerous in the wrong hands. Agent Morrison nodded. Imagine having instant access to the accumulated scientific knowledge of human civilization, including information about weapons technology, biochemistry, and advanced physics that has been lost to history. I was beginning to understand why this was considered a national security issue. If Elena and the other survivors could access genetic memories containing advanced scientific knowledge, they essentially had the potential to rediscover technologies that modern science had not yet developed. But Elena seems completely harmless, I protested. She has been cooperative and helpful throughout her treatment. Dr. Foster, that may be because she has been instructed to appear harmless by the network, Agent Morrison replied. We have reason to believe that the missing subjects are planning something, and Elena's role may be to gather intelligence from inside the medical system. At that moment, my pager buzzed with an urgent message from Dr. Park. Elena unconscious again. Brain activity off the charts. Come immediately. I showed the message to Agent Morrison and Dr. Walsh. I need to get back to my patient. We are coming with you, Agent Morrison said. If Elena is having another episode, we need to monitor what kind of information she might be transmitting to the network. As we hurried back toward Elena's room, I could not help but feel that I was caught in the middle of something much larger and more dangerous than a simple medical case. Elena might be a victim of illegal experimentation, or she might be part of a coordinated effort by enhanced individuals to access dangerous knowledge. But regardless of which version of the truth was correct, I was still her doctor, and my primary responsibility was to her medical care and well-being. When we reached Elena's room, we found Dr. Park monitoring her vital signs as she lay unconscious, her brain activity readings showing patterns unlike anything I had ever seen before. "How long has she been like this?" I asked. "About 10 minutes," Dr. Park replied. "But Amanda, listen to this." He turned up the audio on one of the monitoring devices, and we could hear Elena speaking in the 13th language, even though she appeared to be completely unconscious. Agent Morrison pulled out a recording device. "Dr. Foster, this is exactly what we were afraid of. She is in full communication with the network." As we listened to Elena speaking in the mysterious 13th language while unconscious, Agent Morrison worked with some kind of translation software on his tablet. After several minutes, he looked up with a grave expression. "Dr. Foster, according to our analysis, Elena is not just communicating with the network, she is receiving coordinated instructions." "Instructions for what?" I asked. Before Agent Morrison could answer, Elena's eyes suddenly opened, but they had changed. Instead of her normal brown eyes, they now glowed with a faint silver light, similar to what I had heard described in some of the other cases Dr. Park had researched. "Dr. Amanda Foster," Elena said, but her voice had changed too. It was still her voice, but it carried harmonics and tones that made it sound like multiple people speaking in perfect unison. "We need to speak with you." "We?" Agent Morrison stepped forward, his hand moving toward what I assumed was a weapon. "Elena, who is we?" Elena turned her glowing eyes toward him. "Agent Robert Morrison, badge number 7429, assigned to the Enhanced Human Containment Project. We know who you are, and we know why you are here." The fact that she knew Agent Morrison's badge number, information she could not possibly have had access to, confirmed that she was indeed connected to some kind of intelligence network. "Elena," I said gently, "it is Dr. Foster. Can you hear me?" She turned back to me, and for a moment her eyes flickered back to normal brown. "Dr. Foster, I am still here, but I am also connected to my brothers and sisters from the Prometheus Institute. We need to tell you the truth about what happened to us." Agent Morrison activated his recording device. "Elena, you are under federal investigation. Anything you say can and will be used in determining the threat level you and your associates pose to national security." Elena smiled sadly. "Agent Morrison, we pose no threat to humanity. We are trying to save it." She sat up in bed and spoke a long passage in the 13th language. Then she translated, "The Prometheus Institute did not create our abilities. They simply removed the barriers that were preventing us from accessing what was always part of human genetic potential." "What barriers?" I asked, though I suspected Agent Morrison did not want me encouraging this conversation. "Dr. Foster, approximately 12,000 years ago, human civilization reached a level of development far beyond what exists today. We had technology that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, travel between stars, and even extend human consciousness beyond the physical body." Elena's eyes were fully silver now, and her voice carried the unmistakable harmonics of multiple speakers. But something happened, a catastrophic event that not only destroyed that advanced civilization, but also genetically modified human survivors to prevent them from rediscovering that knowledge. Agent Morrison interrupted. "Elena, you are describing delusions created by the illegal experimentation you underwent. None of what you are saying has any basis in historical fact." Elena looked at him with what seemed like pity. "Agent Morrison, Your own government has archaeological evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations. Technologies that should not have existed according to your timeline of human development. But that evidence is classified at levels far above your clearance. She turned back to me. Dr. Foster, we are not trying to threaten anyone. We are trying to restore human potential that was artificially limited. The genetic memories we can access contain solutions to problems your civilization faces: climate change, disease, energy scarcity, even death itself. Then why are some of your associates missing from federal custody? Agent Morrison demanded. Because your government wants to weaponize our abilities rather than use them to help humanity, Elena replied. Some of our brothers and sisters decided they could not remain imprisoned while possessing knowledge that could end human suffering. Elena wrote something quickly in her symbol language and showed it to me. The translation was, Dr. Foster, you have a choice. Help us share this knowledge freely, or watch as it becomes another tool for those in power to control others. Agent Morrison stepped closer to Elena's bed. Dr. Foster, I need you to step away from the patient. We are transferring her to a secure federal facility immediately. But before anyone could move, every electronic device in the room began malfunctioning. The lights flickered, the monitoring equipment emitted high-pitched whines, and Agent Morrison's recording device started playing back conversations in the mysterious 13th language. Elena spoke one final sentence in that otherworldly tongue, then translated. The network is protecting me now. Agent Morrison, tell your superiors that we will share our knowledge freely with all humanity, or we will share it with no one. Suddenly, the room fell completely silent. All the electronic interference stopped, and Elena's eyes returned to normal brown. She looked at me with her usual gentle expression. Dr. Foster, I am sorry you got caught up in all this. But now you understand why I cannot remain in federal custody. There is too much at stake. Before Agent Morrison could respond, the lights went out completely. When the emergency power kicked in 30 seconds later, Elena was gone. Not just missing from the room, completely gone, as if she had never been there at all. Agent Morrison immediately called for a lockdown of the hospital, but the security cameras showed no record of Elena leaving her room. She had simply vanished. 3 days later, I received a package at my home with no return address. Inside was a notebook filled with Elena's symbol writing, along with a translation guide. The final message, written in English, read, Dr. Foster, thank you for treating me with kindness and respect. The knowledge is real, and someday it will be shared with everyone. Until then, know that we are watching over humanity, protecting and preparing for the day when the barriers can be safely removed from everyone. Plaçons anses devoir. I still have that notebook, and I have learned to read some of the symbol language. The knowledge contained in it is extraordinary. Medical techniques that could revolutionize healthcare, scientific principles that could solve energy problems, and philosophical insights that could transform human civilization. But I also understand why it might be too dangerous to share all at once. Some knowledge carries great responsibility, and perhaps Elena and her network are right to be careful about how and when it is revealed. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself writing in Elena's symbols, and I wonder if someday I might hear that 13th language calling to me too.